Okay, so let's move on to the next segment. What if you have the empirical formula given and you want to guess that what was the molecular formula for that compound, right? Okay, जो empirical formula, it is like the simplified version of the molecular formula, right? You just pick a common factor and then you just divide it by that common factor to get the empirical formula, right? Just like ratios. But what if you have the empirical formula and you want to know कि ये किस compound का empirical formula था, right? So to do that, we'll follow some steps. Okay, so first of all, the first step to calculate the molecular formula is to calculate the empirical formula's mass. Okay, the mass of the empirical formula, for example, we'll just use the same example again. So we'll use the example of glucose again, right? So glucose has a molecular formula of C6H12O6, right? The This is the molecular formula for glucose. The empirical formula for glucose, it is CH2O, right? The empirical formula. Now, the first step is to calculate the mass of the empirical formula. So basically, you just add up the masses of atoms in this empirical formula. You have one carbon atom, so that is 12. And then you add the mass of two hydrogen atoms, that is 2 into 1, right? Or just 2. And then you add the mass of oxygen, that is 16. Okay. And what do you get? So 12 and 6, that is 28, and 28 into 2 is 30, right? So you get 30. That is the 30 grams per mole is the empirical formula mass of CH2O, right? That's the first step. You divide the molar mass, यानी कि ये वाली mass जो है 30 grams per mole of the compound by the empirical formula mass. Okay. So, and then you multiply the subscripts in the empirical formula by this ratio. We'll just go over an example. Okay. So we have the same example. We have CH2O, right? The empirical formula has been given. We have CH2O and a compound, uh, and then you have the molar mass of that compound, right? So this is the actual compound, and then you have its empirical formula. So this is the full compound. इसकी mass दी हुई है. So how do you calculate the molecular formula when you have these two data given to you? So the first step is to calculate the empirical formula mass, just like we talked about a few moments ago. So carbon, you just add up the empirical formula mass of carbon, two hydrogen atoms, and one oxygen atom. That gives you 30 gram per mole, right? ये तो मैंने अभी किया. The next step is to divide the molecular mass by the empirical formula mass. So the molecular mass of that compound is already given. That is 180 grams per mole. And you have the empirical formula mass. Okay? So you'll just use these two. I'll just use a different color. Okay? So you'll just use these two to calculate the factor with which you will multiply the empirical formula to get the molecular formula. So just divide the 180 grams per mole by the empirical formula, and 180 divided by 30 gives you 6. So what you do is that you multiply this 6 by the number of atoms in the empirical formula, right? So the empirical formula which was given was CHO, and this was like 1, 2, oh sorry, 1, right? यही था empirical formula जो दिया हुआ था. So 6, you just multiply 6 with all of these, okay? You'll multiply 6 with 1, you'll multiply 6 with 2, and 6 with 1 again. And that gives you C6, H12, and O6. Okay? Simple. That's the last step. Just multiply the subscripts of the empirical formula by this value, which you got by dividing the molar mass of the compound by the empirical formula mass, and then you get the exact number of atoms in the actual molecule, and that gives you the molecule of glucose. That's how you calculate the molecular formula from the empirical formula and the molar mass. सही है. So hope that's clear. If you have any questions, please do ask.